On PM Express tonight, the tragedy of the Takoradi missing girls, the bitter lessons. And there's a lot to go through as far as the lessons are concerned. What do we know so far? We know that there's been mixed reaction since the police announced last night that the death of the 4 Takoradi missing girls. All along, we've been talking about 3 missing girls, and then yesterday we had confirmation that apparently 1 more girl had also been kidnapped and murdered, together with the 3 that we've been campaigning about here on JoyNews. The acting IGP, James Apombuenu, announced that the DNA test on the remains proved positive, that they are in fact the remains of these 4 beautiful young girls who are no longer with us. Now, the Takoradi girls, according to the IGP, were victims of a kidnapping and murdering syndicate in the Takoradi area. Some members of the syndicate are behind bars, and the trial will begin shortly. The question is whether the evidence that the police have already is enough to secure conviction. That's a big question that, again, we need to be interrogating. That is an essential part of bringing closure to these families who will be yearning for the daughters to be found for some time now. Now, he also bemoaned the inability of the service to obtain actionable intelligence. In other words, they had a lot of information from Nigeria, from Ghana, from the sub-region, from Togo. Very little of the information they got was actionable. Actionable meaning they could work on and get some real results on the basis of that information. So that was a major challenge that the police had to deal with. The arrest, we know, of the alleged kidnapper has effectively thwarted the ability of the syndicate to operate. That is a police spinning the positive sides to the what happened yesterday, but also to the arrest that is made as a result of the investigations. Let's track this on the genesis, shall we? We know that the girls were kidnapped between August and December 2018, the 4 of them. This gentleman here is a prime suspect in the case. He's a Nigerian. He's someone who took wills, was arrested in the western region. It is his home that they discovered the remains. We'll talk about that very shortly. He broke jail. He broke the police cells where he was being captured, and then a few days later he was recaptured. We know that. Now here is where they found the remains of these girls. That's where they discovered these skeletal parts in this particular place, and this place is the home that the prime suspect used to occupy. That's where they found the remains. We also know that another set of human remains were also retrieved at Nkrofo near new site of Takoradi as part of the investigations. We now know the identity of that remains that were discovered. There's the fourth girl who was also kidnapped very tragically. Now, it took the police over a month to complete the DNA test, and which is itself a subject to some considerable controversy. So the big question to ask, what are the lessons, the bitter lessons from this? Are we learning them? Can this be a source of real policing reforms? This is the biggest kidnapping case the police have handled. There have been challenges with the process, the investigations. The police say to us tonight, but there's also been successes with the arrests that they've made. And so we will try and open this all up and delve into, yes, there have been the parents complaining, the criticism from the police, the threat from the police. If you strip all that away, what should we be learning from this? When this particular threat, which is becoming a sub-regional issue, and some say this is just an indication of what might happen, how can we use it to get the police ready for the next big kidnapping case? Stay with us here on PM Express. Live on PM Express, my guest in the studio is Dr. Richmond Afakwa, who is the head Department of Forensic Sciences, University of Cape Coast. Also with me today is Adam Bona, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Security Warehouse Limited and an analyst as well in that area. We have for you tonight also Professor Ajimambedu Akosa. He's a pathologist, he's a former president of the GB, the Ghana Medical Association, the former head of the Ghana Health Service, and he has some very interesting thoughts on the way the police has handled the probe into this matter when it comes to the pathological aspect of it. We'll be hearing his views here on PM Express very shortly. So stay with us. Very interesting conversation that I expect to unfold as we begin to unpack what we've heard yesterday and the reactions that we had from the family today. Mr. Apoka, let me start with you from that point, the family's reaction to the announcement. What do you make of it? There are a few things that you've said tonight. Fundamentally, don't trust the police, outcome of the police DNA testing. They believe that this is a part of a cover-up. In fact, one of the fathers said to us that this is the police's attempt to simply close the case and move on, because they have to close it. So pressure, goes off. And then fourthly, they've also announced tonight that because they don't believe that their children are dead, they've gone ahead to hire their own people to continue the search for the girls. How do you react to all that?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. First and foremost, as I have always been saying, I think it's at this time we need to sympathize and empathize with the family members. The whole news came, I don't know whether it came as a shock to them, but once you hear of the death of a family member, definitely it is devastating. For me, the reaction of the family is expected. It's expected. I mean, coming from the very moment where the skeletal remains were found, they have been skeptical. It took a lot of effort for us to get the family members to cooperate with the police. They have raised a lot of questions. They have raised a lot of mistrust for the police. I knew whichever results the police was going to give us, the family members were going to reject it, because the mistrust has been there.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, yeah. But I mean, those in the media. Yeah. I mean, one family, for example, has not been in the media for a long time, and they have accepted the results. They are moving on as a family. The rest have not accepted the results, and from day one, they have expressed their mistrust for the police. I don't think if the result has been otherwise, they would have accepted it anyway. But this is my point. If the police had something to hide, Evans, they won't come out and say that these remains we found are those of the girls. Why do I say that? Once you make that statement, you give the family members the power to come for the human remains and do their own investigation. If you are hiding something, you have put yourself in some level of jeopardy.
Explain that. So you're saying that this particular announcement shifts the power into the hands of the parents?
Exactly.
It's automatic. The police is obliged now to hand the remains over?
The remains, right.
Because the family has a right to give their members of their daughters a befitting burial, whichever state their mortal remains are in. They have a right to come for the skeletal remains now and then give them a befitting interment. Have the normal cultural funeral for them. You understand? So before the interment process, they can decide, as they are saying, that they are going to have a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion, whichever number of times they want the remains tested to be sure that these are the remains of our child.
Should the police itself had done a second opinion on this by themselves?
The police has, when you talk about DNA analysis, you don't do it once. This is what we have to understand. You repeat the process a number of times. You don't do it once, and once you get a particular result, just once you are done. No, you do it several times. They have done it several times. They have looked at several genetic loci of maternity and paternity and repeated the results. They repeated the test several times. You understand? So a second...
So you know this for a fact?
I'm talking from the point from the point of a DNA analyst. And you cannot be.
So that's my question about: are you saying what should happen or what indeed happened in this case?
I am saying what should happen, and I'm sure what did happen.
Okay.
You understand? Because no forensic analyst, no DNA analyst will, even for basic undergraduate work in the university, you don't do DNA analysis on a sample just once, no, and say I have results. You repeat it. Not just DNA, any experiment at all. You don't do it just once. You repeat it.
Okay.
So that you know that the results you are getting are reproducible. You understand? So the police has done that, and they have come out with this result. If indeed they have anything to hide, the results they will give us is the remains we found are not the girls. So we are going to keep on looking for the girls. And after 7 years, we don't find them. The girls are pronounced dead. The docket is closed, and we move on. Mm. You understand? And that is a normal process. But now they say these are the girls. So they are going to, definitely the family members have a right to the mortal remains of the girls. And now they can subject these to further testing.
Should they?
They should. At this point, they should. I mean, so that everybody will be settled. Yeah. We can't keep holding the whole nation to ransom this way. We have to move on.
Okay.
We have to.
That's an interesting point. Would you encourage the police to actually actively assist the process of the parents and the relatives' own independent verification of the DNA results?
Oh yes, why not? I think so, because then it will bring probably, this whole thing to a closure. But good evening to viewers, and condolences to the family. Mm. If you ask me, I would say that this is scientific. You can't conjecture. And therefore, I am aware that the police have the best DNA lab in the whole of the sub-region. Yeah. They have the best DNA lab in the whole of the sub-region.
Maybe including Nigeria?
Yes. Sure. We have the best.
Sure. What makes ours the best?
I mean, it's the top on the range. Mm-hmm. Top on the range. That's what it means, top on the range. And so it means that you can only go, if you want to do this outside West Africa, you might have to go to, we used to do this in South Africa. Yeah. So it means you have to go to South Africa, or you have to go to the north, maybe Egypt, or maybe Morocco, or any Tunisia. But apart from that, in West Africa, you won't find the kind of equipment the Ghana police has in terms of DNA testing and this type of forensic analysis
and expertise.
And so, as far as I'm concerned, probably the too much of the conjecturing we need to stop, and subject this to proper scientific proof, so that we don't.
Police say they've done that already.
Yes, so but you have,
just like Dr. Afako, you're saying that it's important at this stage.
Yes,
to get the families to do their own.
They should do their own, or else that permanent state of denial. Mm. If it is not done, that permanent state of denial, because then you have too many people speaking to a subject that sometimes, for their own parochial interest, they try to spin it around and try to confuse everybody, and don't go to get the report. Try to speak to even those who took part in this whole analysis. Because then for instance, if I want to question Dr. Afuakwe's credibility in terms of if he was part of the team who did this analysis, the only way I can do that is not to sit out there and just question. I would want the reports of what he did. Did he follow the protocols? Because then, if you want to mix water with sugar, you mix water with sugar. If you go to mix water with oil, you would get a different results. But if you follow the process, then you would say, oh, being probably a forensic analyst, looking at this, I think Dr. Afuakwa missed some of the protocols. But it looks like the talking is too much. So I would ask that the police should assist them with all the resources. And it is expensive. There's one thing we shouldn't lose sight, even though the human, I mean, we can't equate that to how the family feels. It is expensive, and I'm just looking at it and saying that for purposes of bringing proper closure to this, the state, I wouldn't even say the police, the states should assist them. If it's no matter how much it's going to cost, the state should assist them to subject this to another test. Because then I've heard, you know, comments such as when the police were doing the analysis, they didn't bring the family in. You know, I believe that in criminal, you know, investigations, they found something that is suspected to be human remains. At that point, the police themselves couldn't have even said it is human remains. You have to find out if it is human remains, then you move on. Whose human remains are these? And so if you brought the family members into, let's say, this is the lab, and it ends up that these human remains are not that of your family, have you not violated these other human remains you have found? And so mine is that police needed to do, the law mandates them to do what they have done. They have brought their portion of the case in terms of matching, you know, the human remains to their relations. They've done that. And so that case, for the police, if you ask me, I will say it's closed. The families can move further to say, we want to do our own independent.
You say the state should assess that process?
Yes, the state should assess.
Should the state assess that process? You agree with that, Dr. Falcon?
At this point, I don't know whether I should agree or not. Because it's expensive? The families, not that the state can afford it.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. In terms of, yes.
The mistrust. You see, the mistrust is not just for the police, it's for the state.
True.
So once there is state involvement, we finish and we come back and the family members are still saying that there was some level of state involvement, so we still cannot trust the results. The state can assess.
Who just give them money?
And give them money.
That could be for me, the involvement is just give them money.
If they have to fly to South Africa to go and do it,
no, the state shouldn't fly it.
No.
The state should, if the state is going to assist, and it's not mandatory for the state to assist. If they are going to assist.
But where else in Ghana will they get the independence and the quality to do a DNA in the lab?
That is, there are private institutions that may be able to do it.
In Ghana?
Yeah, in collaboration with, of course, a lot of these private labs have collaborations with other partners outside the country.
They'll take it in.
So they definitely will start something here, do some preliminary analysis here in country, and fly the rest to wait for the genetic analysis to be done outside and the results brought back.
So the state should finance that process for the family if
it becomes necessary. Yeah. But if there are some philanthropists who may decide to fund it. I have heard some GoFundMe projects being done for the families to be able to afford.
Yes, also good.
I mean, it's also good. Yeah. But whatever, in order to bring closure to this case, I think a second opinion from the families is important. Very important.
I'm going to bring in now Professor Bedu Akosa, who has been speaking also today. Remember, he's a pathologist, has been following this as has unfolded over the last months. He has some views to share on this, and I want to, the producer of the show, Aisha Ibrahim, my able, capable producer, went to track him down and spoke to him for PM Express.
Heard of this news yesterday night, and it disturbed me enormously because it was almost as if we'd closed the chapter. But I've been in pathology since 1980, and in every situation it calls for a second opinion. After how many years? 39 years of doing pathology, I don't believe that what I say is conclusive, particularly when it involves laboratory work and it depends on even the temperature within the laboratory. It depends on the fluids that are used in denaturing. It involves, the level of degeneration. And these are bodies that were found in a septic tank, we're told. So at the end of the day, you need somebody who is extremely experienced. And I don't believe the forensic pathology laboratory has somebody who is so competent that in a situation like this, and particularly of such national interest, that we will not even attempt to seek a second opinion. I will stand corrected. If they sought a second opinion and it is from a very experienced forensic pathologist,
we don't have those details.
We don't have those details.
And they would have done us a lot of good by telling us.
Absolutely. So for me, I don't think that this matter is concluded yet. You see, anywhere else, just to make assurance double sure, they would have done this. I mean, if, for example, we took Scotland Yard, for example, having done everything, they would probably even seek experience from an academic forensic pathologist to just come, check over, and make sure that everything that has been said or done is, what it should be. But I don't think we've gone that far. And to conclude and even go straight to relations and tell them that this is what has happened really worries me.
Especially when the family is in doubt of this whole forensic test, because they say at no point in time were they involved in the forensics. What is the standard procedure with regards to conducting such forensics?
Well, the facts of the matter is that, number one, you see remains like that, the first thing you've got to ascertain is whether they're human remains. Because, of course, you can have bits and pieces of animals, So the first thing to establish is whether they're human remains. We don't know which portions of the various bodies were found. So having ascertained that, then you want to begin to see whether you can even identify the sexes of these these human parts. So you might end up doing that. The third thing is then to begin the process of proper identification. Now, presumably having been in the cesspit for quite a while, all distinguishing features have all degenerated. So yes, that is when you come to the issue of DNA. Now, DNA can be sourced from any material. Once you have got human remains, whether it's even bone, you can get DNA from that. You now need to get this DNA and compare with DNA from relations. Again, what is important is that in doing that work, it's got to be scrupulously honest and with integrity. Because the least opportunity, you are then comparing DNA with somebody who is not in any way related. So the first thing is get close relations, father, mother, brother, sister. Once you've got that, you've got to go through the processes and get the DNA. And the DNA can be obtained from swapping the cheek, from, even the hair. Once you've done that, you now have got to match. Now, in matching, what we're saying is that these things must be done under optimal conditions. Any degree of variations might create anomalous reports. And that is why I'm saying that having done this, it is then important to say, these are my results. Can we get somebody to come and oversee, check, make sure that the methodology used is appropriate, it is what is expected in a case like this of such national interest. A second eye is always necessary, particularly in a case of such national interest. I think that in areas where we do not have enough expertise, it is always important that the police collaborates with an established and a well-seasoned police force or police service. So, for example, I know the problems of police forensic pathology in this country. For years, we've not had a police forensic pathologist. Currently, the police pathologist, took up the job not too long ago from Konfanochi Teaching Hospital. What level of training he has done in forensics, I don't know. The forensic laboratory itself, who's been there, what is the level of training, what is the level of expertise, what is the link, who is, in a sense, the authorizing laboratory, all these things must be established.
That is Professor Bedua Kosa there, his thoughts on this subject. Very interesting, fascinating thoughts he expressed there. Dr. Farquhar, that's the prof. What do you say about his thoughts on this?
First and foremost, I think we will have to make some things very clear. I blame the way this whole thing began. I mean, we said we were going to do pathology. As a matter of fact, what was done was not pathology. What was done was forensic anthropology.
What's the difference?
The difference is clear. Pathology is looking for causes of disease, causes of death, and the rest. But anthropology, in this case, we had human remains going to look for age, sex. It's not pathology, it's anthropology. Matching the bones were mixed up, matching the skull to the correct vertebra, matching it to the correct humerus, matching it to the correct femur. That is not pathology, that is anthropology. Looking at the skull, looking at the pelvis to determine sex is anthropology, it's not pathology. You understand? So the narrative began from forensic pathology. I mean, from day one, we said we were going to do pathology on it before we do DNA. But what was done was, in essence, anthropology. So we have to make that clear.
So was what the in terms of who did this job, was it an anthropologist or a pathologist?
The work that was done was anthropology.
I get it. So that's what I'm asking. He says, does the police forensic unit have somebody equipped to do anthropology?
So probably he himself didn't even know what they were doing. Because if he knew what they were doing, then his analysis would have actually spoken about anthropology and not pathology.
But so the substantive point you make about do we have that, if that's what it is?
Let's understand this.
Okay.
That was the basis I wanted us to come from. Now, coming from there, a pathologist who has had enough training in the medical field, I mean, playing with bones all the time, and being taught the various projections on the bone, the various dimensions of the bones that differ in the male and the female. For example, in the bone that there is on the frontal bone, there are some projections just above our eyes. Males' own are more pronounced than females. The socket of the eye of the male is more rectangular. Female is more rounded. I mean, this is taught in the medical school. The size of the pelvis, the weight of the pelvis differ in males, it differ in females. That is not pathology, that is anthropology. In the medical school, some of these anthropological studies are taught to the medics, you understand? So a pathologist may be able to do, of course, some of these anthropological analysis. I want that to be clear. And then going forward, DNA work, it's done mostly in machines. You understand? Standard practice.
Calibrate.
Standard practice is that whatever is not put in the machine is put on ice. It's standard practice. So I don't expect any forensic analyst, any DNA analyst to put any sample on the bench and not put it on ice. Standard practice, even an undergraduate is able to do that. And I am aware that the police forensic lab has a DNA analyst, somebody with a PhD for that matter. who did this work. So it's unfortunate that his credibility is called to question this way.
Unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate.
I mean, the gentleman has done a marvelous job. A marvelous job. They compared over 20 different STR loci several times. I mean, after spending sleepless nights to get these results done in the shortest possible time, and his credibility is called to question this way, is extremely unfortunate. And I think we shouldn't condone this, or else every time there is a young and upcoming aspect in the field. I mean, forensic science is an emerging field in our part of the world. It would take young men, young women to study this area
and even come back home to come and practice when they
understand. So somebody has done such a marvelous work, and then within some few minutes we call his credibility to question. I mean, it's very
Prof's
unfortunate.
fundamental point, though, was that second opinion. That is what we have said here. Not what we said here. What we said, there was a family, a lot of family too. What he's saying is the police haven't done that initial work by the department, by the laboratory. Should then, before the announcement, have had a second person who is not attached to the police come in, examine the work that has been done, and then give a second opinion on that process.
That would say the police not trusting.
No,
you know, no.
That's not his point. His point is that it's not about trusting.
What I'm saying is
because of the sensitivity of it.
The case is a sensitive case.
Yeah.
The police believe
that is why he's saying that you need that.
The police believe that they have the expertise to get this done. They have gotten it done. You see, so a second opinion, a second guess on what you have done.
No. You even protect yourself. So, for example, I'm just assuming, I don't know any technical details about this, but just purely from a citizen's point of view, if I was watching the press conference last night and the police say, our own lab did this work, got this result, after they did this, we brought in, as he said, an academic forensic pathologist to come in and double check. He also arrived at the same conclusions. That would have been that for me as a citizen, not knowing any technical details about this,
I can
have brought some conclusivity at least to the police investigation.
I can tell you that the police didn't do this work in isolation.
Okay.
The police had a lot of consultations. You see, the police forensic lab didn't do this work in isolation. They didn't sit alone in their labs and do this work. There was a lot of broad consultations. So if you didn't know this information, you don't conjecture. You don't conjecture and question. You understand?
But
until
you don't see his point, though. That the point about the police themselves doing themselves a favor, looking at how contested this matter is, just bringing the second person.
Not bringing the second person. They have done the work, and
you think the second person would have even trusted the second person?
No, but why? They're doing what I'm trying to say is that under the police own conditions, but he's doing independent work.
This is a homicide. This is a homicide investigation.
To reaffirm what has happened.
This is a homicide investigation. Wait, you see, we are looking at this case in isolation. Yeah. First of all, bones, human remains have been discovered. No missing person becomes difficult to sustain any prosecution in missing person's case. No human remains. I mean, I can deny. I don't know where the person is. Now they found the human remains. The police, by law, must make sure they have the evidence to, prosecute these people before the law court and get the law court to probably give out the stiffest punishment to these guys. But it looks like we are missing that all-important aspect. And looking at it and saying, it's them, it's not them. Now the police has established it. So are we by this inferring and implying that if the police should, because remember this case is in court, so I would have to be mindful of what I'm putting out there. If the police will have to go to court with this same evidence, they will not be able to sustain the judgment in their favor? Is that what we are saying? Because then You need whatever results the police has been able to obtain from this.
But you know that if this goes to court, the police's it's almost guaranteed that the police's results will be challenged.
If they have,
they'll probably have to. The court will have to summon an expert witness.
Exactly. And so the
into
police,
the matter.
You usually
but
would
that
not have,
but that actually supports this point.
Evans, wait.
You see,
the police would not usually take these things into the public if they are not 100% sure, especially when it has to do with homicide.
No, but now you've made my point for me that the question I was going to come to. The point you just made. They wouldn't go into the public, they're not 100% sure. The fundamental reason why we are where we are, because the police came out with information that they were not 100% sure about, that turned out to be false, which is that the girls were alive, we're bringing them home, they will come. That doesn't
go to court.
No. I'm saying
that statement has nothing to do with court.
I get a point you're making, but I'm saying that the fundamental mistrust that has led us to all these questions being asked on the back of the DNA test that was announced yesterday goes to that announcement.
Which announcement?
The CID announcement, and not only CID made that announcement, we've had the Interior Minister say, we have the Gender Minister say.
What has that got to do with courts? No, but what has that got to do with courts?
I'm not even talking about court. I'm talking about the contestation that has happened, the mistrust. People don't believe the outcome.
But what I'm saying is that can we not take this thing out of context? Because remember, we have some people suspecting courts. In police custody. The police need evidence, this same evidence. They will need this same evidence to prosecute them in the law courts. And so if these family members want to, contest this and say, we want to have a second opinion, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, people have asked questions about, the Professor Bedwa Kosa, respectfully have asked question about even the integrity or the credibility of the analyst or the expert who did this work. And I think that is something that he shouldn't do. Maybe he should apologize to those who did this.
Sure.
But what I can say is that the police would have to bring a closure with regards to even holding these guys. I'm sure you know that every offense in this country now is bailable.
Yeah, I mean...
And so you cannot continue to hold them without the evidence that they have committed the crime.
Yes, it.
And so basically what I'm saying is that the police would have to be 100% sure with their results to produce that results before court and say, okay, we have this result that matches these missing persons, who we caught these people, and there is evidence that they were with them. So prosecution continues. If they are fortunate and they get judgment delivered in their favor, they have done...
Are you suggesting that just because this must go to court?
I'm not suggesting...
You're almost saying that because this will go to court and the burden of proof is strict, you trust that the police have done a good job because of that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
But this is the police that has a record in this particular instance of the 3 missing girls. 4 of putting out information about them that turned out to be false. And so why should we believe that because of that they don't have this lock and loaded?
Evans, you see, there is.
That is a fundamental problem.
We are missing a lot of fundamental issues here. You are raising the question about the police announcement, the initial announcement that the girls were okay and they were going to be delivered soon. This is where I diagnosed the problem from. For far too long, criminal investigation in this country has hinged on suspect interrogation. Udutek was arrested, I think, on the 22nd. And from that time, the apartment from which he was arrested was not declared a crime scene. I'm sure people had access to the place. The simplest explanation to that is that the police didn't see the need to go to the place where he was arrested. I'll come back to that. They only saw a suspect who needs to be interrogated, who will, at the end of the day, confess, and then we take the person to court. So the suspect tells you that if you go to Port Harcourt, you find the girls there. The girls have been sent to Nigeria for prostitution. The girls have been sent here to a baby factory, and these are the leads or intelligence the police was following. the police links up with their counterparts in Nigeria, and they have hopes that they are going to deliver the girls because some of the leads or the intelligence they got from the interrogation gave some positive results. So the guy gives an address, they go there, they see some activity at that address, possible kidnapping may have happened there, and they think that they have a lead. You understand? Meanwhile, the crime scene is sitting in Takoradi.
Yeah.
And it's a crime scene that leads to the solving of the...
Exactly. You see, it is the crime scene that led to us identifying the girls. And all this time, we were basing everything on suspect interrogation. When a crime is committed, everything is at the scene. Whichever number of crime scenes you identify, you do a proper investigation and management of that scene, you are sure to come out with some conclusion on what happened, exactly what happened. And you can actually, with some level of certainty, reconstruct the crime from the scene. Suspect interrogation is wonderful. You can't take it out of criminal investigation. But then hinging the whole process of criminal investigation on suspect interrogation is problematic. Yeah. And this is where criminal investigation in our part of the world this is how it has been. So we have to now move from that phenomenon to including crime scene investigation into criminal investigation.
Which is something that the police have started, you say.
Exactly. Exactly. And you see, then someone will ask, why didn't the police do that from day one? And the question we need to answer is, does the police have the skill? Does the police have the tools? Do they have the expertise? Do they have the capacity to conduct these crimes?
And your short answer to that is?
No. Okay. You see, you pick somebody from the senior high school, recruit him into the police service, give him some 6 months training.
So he's a CIA.
They are the police depot. Much of the time they are sweeping and marching. And the person comes back and is a detective.
So he's a CIA.
And you want that person to perform magic as a crime scene? No. It doesn't work that way. There are actually people in the police service who were brought there. We know these things. Let us not play the ostrich here. People in the police service who don't even have the basic qualification of senior high school. They are there. You go to the police station, the policeman cannot write your statement for you. You understand? You want this person to go to the crime scene and perform magic and find a hair fiber, find DNA, or find blood. The criminal has cleaned the crime scene. How is this person going to find blood stains?
You just brought home the purpose of this conversation.
Exactly.
I'm going to take a break. When we return, I'm going to go back there. There are serious lessons.
Sure.
Yeah.
In as much as the police have been criticized, I see this as an opportunity.
Exactly.
Great.
This is a great opportunity. It's a teachable moment for everybody.
Sure.
How we seize on this moment and reform the system is, I guess, the biggest question going forward.
Sure.
There are calls tonight for a proper inquiry, not an inquiry that seeks to punish, but that seeks to understand what went
happened.
wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For recommendation purposes.
What has been wrong?
Wrong.
Exactly.
Okay. For recommendation purposes
Sure.
and for reform.
Sure.
We'll return to that question. And then also the fundamental question that I also need to ask is, does this close the case? Has this ended? The fact that the missing girls are dead and DNA establishes that? Is this chapter closed? Stay with us on PM Express. Live on PM Express, my guests in the studio, and you've already had Professor Kosa, who joined us earlier with his very fascinating thoughts on this particular subject, subject of some controversy and quite some debate here in the studio. Dr. Richmond Afakwa is the head of the Department of Forensic Sciences, University of Cape Coast. Adam Bona, security analyst and CEO of the Security Warehouse Limited, and obviously Dr. Kosa we had earlier. Very quickly, Dr. Afakwa, the question: is this the closing of a chapter? Does the announcement last night close a chapter on this?
That is the thing we have to be very careful about. It looks as if the case is closed. It is not.
No, it's not.
At all.
What is there? What is there to do now?
Crime was committed. 4 young girls have been murdered. Now that has been established now. 4 young girls have been murdered. Suspects have been arrested. The police will need to connect the crime to the suspects. They need to have credible evidence to go to court with and connect these criminals to the suspects. You see, someone will sit at home and say, but the bones were dug from Udotek's place of abode. Is that enough?
It's not.
To get a conviction?
No, it's not. No, at all. They are nowhere closer.
So the CID now should be hot in their heads, trying very hard to connect the suspect or whoever is out there, a syndicate, whatever, to this crime, and bring closure, get a conviction. That is when we can say we have brought closure to this case. What we have done now is begun the case. We now know where the girls are. I'm sure now they are in the police morgue. Now, so we know where they are. What happened to them? We don't know. Who killed them? We don't know.
We don't know.
We have a suspect, or we have suspects. But were they the ones who killed them? Nobody knows. So the story is not over. We haven't brought any closure to this case. We haven't brought any finality to it. It has just begun.
But the point you're making is that the real case now begins.
Yes,
exactly.
Because you have you have human remains or the missing. You found something because in most of these cases, without the missing person, it's difficult to prosecute.
Especially when I'm talking about a syndicate.
Yes.
Especially when the police announced yesterday that the prime suspect says he didn't kill the girl.
Exactly. And one other thing.
The police say they did a video conference and another suspect that was arrested in Nigeria.
Yes, he's in Abuja
and
also.
he was accusing, the guy in Ghana was accusing him of being a guy. And so the guy is not even in that jurisdiction.
Sure.
So you have to actually also look at, I have, documents that shows that some baby factory there, and all that. Does that presuppose that we still have some people from Ghana here in captivity in Nigeria?
Especially when we started with 3 and then discovered that there's 4.
It's a question I've been asking.
It could be more.
It could be more.
But also a fundamental question that I listened to the president wasn't answered is when and where were the girls killed?
Well, so I believe that the investigations will definitely have to establish that.
Because that was missing in the press conference. Because there was a time they said they took them to Nigeria.
Yes.
And then somehow we found the bodies here.
Yes.
So it's...
so it looks like the CID or the police would now have to piece the pieces together.
Quickly, as we wrap up, the lessons.
I
think he started it by talking about the sort of things that we need to be doing now. This is an opportunity, is it not? But how do we seize this opportunity?
We first of all, if we looks like we've jumped, ahead of ourselves. This thing started in Takoradi, and that is where the mistakes started occurring. And so some of us have asked for a whole restructuring of the police administration, or the entire police, the whole restructuring, so that their protocols can be broken down properly. Because then, as we speak, we don't even have missing persons hotline. And so assuming somebody is missing in whatever village, and you go to the nearest police station, the police officer there was given just 6 months recruit training and is a counter NCO, non-commissioned, NCO. He doesn't understand these things, because he hasn't been taught. So how do you connect to a hotline that says, if you go to report and they don't mind you, do this? And remember, in these cases, timeliness is very important. One other thing some of us have called for is, can we, for God's sake, have the independent police, complaint commission established? Because then, for instance, this whole thing that is going on about somebody has done this, somebody has done that. If we had this complaint commission,
they can look into it.
Then you go and report to the commission. The commission would then commission persons like my brother here, who is an expert in this whole thing and say, okay, go into it and give us a report.
Let me just bring in those.
And so for me, those are some of the things I think we should.
What reforms do you want to see on the back of this, and how can the police seize on this? I remember the last time you were here, you said the police are not even taught kidnapping. This is new to us.
Yeah, I mean, unconventional.
On the back of this, clearly we are learning this is not probably going to be the last, because it's coming to our shores. It's in the sub-region now. This is an opportunity. How do we seize it? What do we have to change?
Recruitment into policing. Fundamental. You see, police is seen as a job, not a profession. Somebody is frustrated out there. He has tried applying for jobs for several times. Police announces recruitment and they apply.
Yeah.
They see it as a job. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to draw salary. It's not a profession. So we have to change police recruitment and recruit people who come into the police for a profession. Secondly, you see, in the past 1 week, there has been about 12 murders countrywide.
Yeah, that's a week.
In the past 1 week. But we have been so sensational about this Takoradi missing girls case. And we are pitching everybody against the police, tying the hands of the police and freeing the hands of criminals. This is what I said the last time I was here, that if we are not careful and we tie the hands of police too much, we bring a state of insecurity into this country. In the past 1 week, there has been 12 murders.
Wrap up for me.
12 murders. So we need to begin to look at sense without sensation and understand and learn a lot of lessons from
You have to change police, what they are taught in school. You have to
the curriculum has to be changed, and I can tell you on authority.
On the back of this, what do we have to introduce?
The detective training academy curriculum is being changed. Currently, we have changed the curriculum. We have tried to bring in new trends, new dimensions, increased the span and scope, increased the time, brought in crime scene investigation, and all these new.
Should we introduce kidnapping?
Of course.
Of course.
There's frontiers of new criminalities, and all of these are there. We've brought in more international policing, community policing, all of these are there. And I'm sure that once this curriculum is rolled out, the police will benefit a lot from it.
Dr. Faku, thank you very much
Sure.
For joining us at the Department of Forensic Sciences University of Cape Coast. Adam Bona, Chief Executive of Security Warehouse Limited, and earlier we were joined by Professor Julia Kosa. He is a pathologist, the former head of the Ghana Health Service. You've watched, there's a lot that the police need to learn from this. The question is, will they learn it? There are calls for an inquiry. Anybody support an inquiry? An inquiry that goes into what happened? Yes or no? You support an inquiry?
Sure, we need to learn lessons.
Lessons. We need to. Okay. So that the police can learn lessons and reform, most importantly. So
but not a punitive one.
Yes, that's where we go next, and let's keep watch and let's see what happens going forward. My name is Evans Mensah. Enjoy the rest of your evening.